Welcome back to another episode of the Max Term Podcast. Kyle Stitch here alongside James Finch, and we're back after a short hiatus, I guess mostly because the hockey world felt like it stopped, and it still feels like it stopped, but feels like a good time to jump on and give little bit of a mid-off season update. We're starting to get a little bit closer to the season, a little bit closer to when players are going to start to report to training camp. And the intention of this episode is kind of taking a look at who's still needs a contract, going to probably be a little bit more of a restricted free agent discussion just by the nature of the names that are out there, but there are still a few interesting unrestricted free agent names as well that are still looking for a home and would expect teams to maybe potentially be inquiring on. So we'll do that, maybe talk about some potential trade candidates as well as players whose potential extensions we're very interested in seeing if they happen in the next couple weeks. This is usually when the teams are back from their cottages. People are starting to get back in the office. The players are starting to become more around. So this is kind of when things start to percolate a little bit more. A lot of teams will like to wait for an extension until they're back at training camp to be able to do a big social media like post and show all that off. So
Press conference. Yep.
yeah, and anything that they can kind of do to get a little bit more PR, a little bit more of a hit on that. So that's kind of the plan this episode. We appreciate you listening. Max Term Podcast available on all major podcast platforms, plus YouTube. We appreciate you subscribing, liking, commenting on YouTube. Try try to check the comments, try to interact. I think one or two episodes ago we had a little bit of a back and forth in the comments and discussions always fun and interesting. Then you can also find us on X Blue Sky Threads. X is where it's easiest to reach us again at AFP Analytics. And then all these contract projections are available on afpanalytics.com. I'm hoping, I'm going to say I'm hoping to have an update prior to the new collective bargaining agreement, at least for the extension eligible players, because those are players that are going to be impacted by the new 8 max term rules, basically. So hopefully start churning out some of those and maybe get a little bit of an update kind of based on how the market has moved a little bit as well as the new rules going into effect. So it might not be every player, but I think there's a certain threshold that players' values aren't necessarily changing at a certain point.
Yeah, it's probably, especially with the way the market's gone, some of the bigger names will see a bit of a shift. And then, as you said, with those new rules, I think it's the 16th of September. So we go from 8 or 7 years. Well, I guess 8 years being the max on a deal with your team to seven being the max. And then next year, when free agency rolls around, if the players hit unrestricted free agency, that's 6 years max. Um, so yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Kind of what happens with the values of players. I don't necessarily see them going down just the way things have gone. But I think there's a lot more comps now that point to kind of the shorter deals. So we'll see how it looks.
I think that's actually a really good transition to start talking about some of the RFAs because there are two things to kind of highlight, especially for some of the top names. First, as we already said, there's kind of a soft deadline on September 15th if anyone is still interested in doing an 8-year contract. As you kind of alluded to, though, I think every RFA that signed basically after July 1st, so basically after the Leo Carlson offer sheet, has done, I want to say a 5-year or less deal. No
Yeah.
one's, I can't think of anyone, Ville Kuvinen being, I think, the only one to do a max term
Eight.
deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and even some of the bigger names. So just rattling off the big young players that have signed. So as you said, Carlson, Bedard's deal got done. Celebrini's extension done. And as you said, five or less. So it seems like it's starting to trend that way, um, for sure. And there's still, I would say, two bigger names that need a contract this offseason that are RFAs. So I guess we could go either way here because they're kind of both related. There's Adam Fantilli. So we look at the center position. We saw Carlson and Bedard sign. Fantilli was kind of part of that upper group. Um, they both kind of helped reset the market a little bit. So Fantilli could draw a bit higher than what we had him at. So 8 years, 10 million. We could see that value up a little bit into the 12, 13 range, maybe, and also on a shorter term.
He's interesting because we struggled mightily coming up
Yeah.
with his contract originally. He's definitely a tier below Carlson, Bedard.
Yeah.
The comp that we have him closely pinned to is Logan Cooley with Utah, basically the exact same contract. It, I'm very curious how the market shift might affect Fantilli in particular because again, he doesn't have the production. He's a very good player, but he hasn't quite taken the step forward that that I think you are hoping for if you're Columbus with him being the former third overall pick. So does that get him? Does he have enough of a leg to stand on to get a Bedard, get closer, pulled up to Bedard, Carlson, and the fact that no offer sheet has come for him this summer, despite all of the noise around Carl's what was available to Leo Carlson. I kind of wonder where the market is. I wonder if maybe the compromise here is a shorter term, but for the AAV that we already have projected. Maybe not more AAV, but at least less term. So he hits unrestricted free agency sooner.
Possibly. And that kind of is a little bit of a mid ground because you kind of keep the Cooley comp there, who signed well before market shifted. He was beginning of last season, I think, or right
I
around
think he
there
was mid. I think it was into the season a little bit,
a little
but
bit,
it's
but
it's been long enough.
well before the big shift in values and term. So kind of keeping that same AV around 10 mil, but kind of also the team giving in maybe a little bit with term. So it does sort of match the market shift. That could make a lot of sense for someone like Fantilli. I'm kind of in the same boat as you. It is interesting that there wasn't much noise offer sheet wise around him. Um, which, yeah, that might kind of, in a way, be a sign of his market might not shift quite as much as those other two, Bedard and Carlson. Um, the other name that is semi-connected here, as we were bringing up the names that have signed, specifically Leo Carlson, Cutter Gauthier. So this is one that as soon as Carlson signed that offer sheet and it was matched by Anaheim, it was pretty much being put out there, hey, like you're gonna have to pay up here as well. So this was one projected 7 by 8.8. That, I mean, that could be almost doubled for like what's kind of been put out there, expectation. Um, so that's an interesting one, and I'm gonna pull it up really quick. Anaheim is in a tough spot. So we look at Carlson and Bedard, and I guess you could say Celebrini too, as these young players going short term. The AVs are still very high. So if Gauthier is looking for, let's say, 15, 16, that's with kind of a lower term already, would be the expectation. Um, so going shorter term isn't necessarily going to help them save money. Anaheim is likely going to need to somehow clear some cap space as well as part of this deal. Um, I think they're kind of sitting around the 9 or 10 mark, kind of depending on how the rosters are shown. Um, so that's kind of a tough situation at the moment. It's not as simple as, okay, we just need to get to the preseason, get the player in the building and sign the contract. There's movement that has to happen with Anaheim to finalize a Gauthier deal. Unless they can convince him to do like a 1 year right at that remaining amount. But I don't know. He's coming off, I think, did he get the 40 goals? Um,
I thought
41.
he, yeah, yeah.
41. So like he may want to cash in right now. And especially he can point to, well, you gave all this money to Carlson now. Pay me up there as well.
He- Maybe he's agreeable to a 1 year contract because right now he's a 10.2C restricted free agent, which means he could not solicit an offer sheet. That's kind of why holding pattern on him.
Yep.
But if he were to do just a 1 year contract next offseason, he is a restricted free agent, no arbitration rights. But that means that he could go out and solicit an offer sheet. Oh, and by the way, I guess they got 2 years on Beckett Seneca, but that's also he becomes extension eligible next offseason. So they might be potent if they can't work out a long-term deal with Goche this offseason, do end up going 1, maybe 2 years or something. They're staring down the barrel for two of those guys. Although they'll also have Chris Kreider and Alex Killorn's cap hits coming off after this season. So maybe a 1 year deal makes sense. But man, are you just inviting another offer sheet
Yeah.
for Goche if you go and do that? Because it doesn't seem like these negotiations are going smoothly, I guess is probably the nicest way to put that.
So I was just gonna say that's kind of if you're if you're kind of forcing Gauthier into this 1 year situation, that's not great, especially as you just laid out. If he is well, he would be offer sheet eligible after a 1 year deal if that's what happens. And if he really doesn't want to go that route and he's just kind of stuck there, now you have a player maybe not too happy with how things have gone, um, which I guess kind of seems to be the trend with Anaheim. Um, yeah, tough situation next offseason for them. If they do the 1 year. And if they don't do the 1 year and it ends up being 15, 16 million, that's a significant amount of money to figure out what do we do to clear that space up right now. Um, as much as we're talking about Kreider and Killorn being cleared off the books after this season, they're important pieces to their team right
Yeah.
now. So like it's not as simple as can we move one of those guys? It might have to be that conversation, but um, that's not an easy conversation for them to have, especially like they've got turnover in Anaheim already. They're more than half their defensive group is gone. Uh, yeah. So that's a very interesting situation from a possible trade market aspect, a new contract aspect, how it could impact next year. Um, there's a lot of drama there, I think.
One more kind of point that on Anaheim kind of being in a little bit of a bind. So gave AJ Greer a pretty significant contract
Yeah.
after acquiring his rights. I'm that is kind of not looking great. But I think the bigger issue is one name that could be moved is Vetrano. He's
Yeah.
someone that to clear a little bit of space. He didn't have a great year last year, but conversely, some teams could look at him as a reclamation project. But the way they structured his contract, where there's a lot of deferred money, I'm not sure if another team's going to be super enthusiastic about taking that liability on because I believe that they would be on the hook for paying out the majority of that deferred money if they were to take him on. I think X amounts deferred each season. So Vetrano has 2 years left. So the 2 out of the 3 years that had deferred money in, I believe would be paid out by the acquiring team. And I don't know how many owners are going to have an appetite for adding that kind of liability in on their books.
Yeah. That's very true. So that kind of adds a whole layer of maybe one of the more obvious candidates to move isn't as simple to move as they usually would be.
Yeah. So
Yeah, not great for
Anaheim's
Anaheim.
no, not at all. I mean, they create a lot of these headaches themselves, signing Greer, playing hardball with the RFAs, kind of calling Leo Carlson and his agents bluff on the offer sheet, kind of expect declining. They could have probably had him under contract for a couple less $1 million a year. That couple less $1 million would be critical for them right now.
Um, just to kind of lay it out there. So Greer, Jeff Malott, and Nick Jensen, um, are all, let's see here, all new additions taking up 8.35 of cap space, which not great considering the situation they ended up in with Carlson and now Gauthier.
Yeah, yeah. And Jensen
It,
was kind of a necessity after trading away Owen Zellweger, who
yeah. Well,
didn't
and
end up coming in that high contract wise either.
yeah, Carlson gone, Truba gone, Gudis gone.
Yeah,
It, it's justifiable to bring in a veteran right shot defenseman, but just in general, your free agent additions you made before all this happened, do you make all of those additions? I don't know. So Fantilli, Gauthier, those are kind of the top two RFAs still needing deals. There are a couple other more, well, actually a few, I should say. There's three other names. Um, Two defensemen, sort of similar level, maybe not quite, but there's Edvinson with Detroit and then Nikishin, who I'd expect to come in a little lower than Edvinson. Nikishin in Carolina. Um, I don't even really know what to think about the Edvinson situation. So we had seven by about 8.8. I'll round up as our long-term projection for him, and that was just another difficult one because of how they've operated in Detroit. At the same time, it doesn't seem like the same group is running things, but it kind of could still be exactly the same. I don't have a great idea of kind of how that one's going to shake out. Could they still try and force him into the cap culture they have there? Maybe. We shouldn't talk too long about this because we've talked about it to a bigger extent in past episodes, but you have DeBrincat coming up, um, needing a deal soon, and that should be much larger if you're keeping him. So maybe you should just give Edmondson what he deserves. I don't know. Am I shocked this one still needs to get done? Not at all.
The other thing that's made this, just taking that situation out of it, made it tricky from just a pure overall market landscape situation, is Edvinson should be the top defenseman in this year's RFA class. Brant Clark came in 5 years, I think like 7.4, somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
I believe that's correct.
Mintikov and Simone Nemec all came in right around that 5 years, 7 point, we'll just say 7 to 7.5. All of
Yeah.
them fell in that range. Edmondson should be beating that. Is he going to go for a similar term to those guys? In which case, I don't know how much. I don't know if he's going to get above 8 million with those comps all sitting there then, or is he going to try to use most his teammate Mo Sider as the comp, take a little bit more term, a little bit more value? So the market has shifted, but I don't know if it necessarily helps Edvinson in where he's going, because the other kind of shift was the Luke Hughes, the Lane Hudsons going up to about not pushing 9 million, but on 7 8 year contracts.
Yeah.
And that's where we currently have Edmondson projected. So I don't know how he bridges that. At, like, it's kind of a push and pull, I think, between is he going to take the average annual value or the less term. And I don't know if that's an easy answer for the team, the player, anything, kind of how that's all going to shake out.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Is at least on the defensive side, the market did not shift really in the same way as we saw for the forwards. Um, the AAV you would expect on a long-term deal did not stay with the mid-term, the 4 to 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
AAV shifted down with it. So yeah, that is another layer for sure that is probably making it difficult to get a deal done. Um, Nikishin, I feel like should be a little bit of an easier path. At the same time, we're recording August 19th and it's not done yet. Um, but that feels like one that should be able to kind of slot in near or maybe a slot in right under the Clark, Minchikov, Nemec. He is kind of part of maybe the bottom of that group would be my guess is how he's viewed. Um, so I mean, we had 6 by 6.4. I could see it being like a 5 by honestly like 6.4, 6.5. So his projection might actually end up close if it's a longer deal. Or do we see a traditional bridge deal where we had him projected 2 by 3.7? Maybe he does take a little shorter like that. Um, he's another 10.2C. So that was one where an offer sheet was not possible. Um, that's kind of an interesting, to me at least, an interesting situation because Carolina has, again, 9 to 10 mil to work with. So they should be able to fit Nikishin. It's just coming to the right deal.
Yeah, and also he's the 10.2C, but he is older because he came over from Russia. So a 5 year deal for him would be buying more unrestricted free agent years than all
Yeah.
those other guys. So it might be even end up coming in less than that to kind of end up buying similar unrestricted years, which would only be like a 4 year deal, I believe. A 4 year deal, I think, would be the equivalent for him. It would buy one unrestricted year, I believe. And that's what
Okay.
all the other ones were doing. So a average annual value, probably 6.5 to 7 makes sense. Maybe on a
Yeah.
4 year deal then. But yeah, I don't know. It seemed like Caroline was open to moving him. Nothing's kind
Yep.
of materialized there.
And I also wonder there are trade market things that are still to potentially be worked out, and I wonder if they're kind of waiting to finalize something in case something else pops up.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're kind of a team that seems like they're in on if there's a bigger name, they're trying to see if it can work. So that could be one where they kind of have the deals or a deal laid out, and it's just all right, let's wait and see what happens here.
It's, I mean, Nikishin very well could be an asset going out in one of those
Right.
trades, and then they don't want to handcuff the other team to basically, yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, factors going into it, or Carolina's just trying to squeeze him for every dollar of value they possibly can because that's what they do, and that's how they've built the roster they have.
Yeah. The last notable RFA would be Zach Bolduc in Montreal, um, which he was kind of the middle six winger role. So I don't know how much the market's really shifted too much for him. Um, we've projected long term 7 by 6, 6.1. Um, that sort of feels about right. Maybe AAV shifts up a little bit higher on a longer deal like that, but um, probably not too much. I think he would look at like, well, look what Benson got and Doan. Like he would try and push for that type of money, kind of closer to 7. But
And then the team's going to bring in Cole Perfetti probably, who was
yep,
closer to 6 on, I think, what, 5 years, maybe 5, 6 years, something like
I
that.
think so.
Maybe six by
Can look
six.
real quick.
So that would kind of be the push and pull there. All those being middle six type of wingers that have
5 years. Oh,
5
sorry.
years. Yeah, yeah,
5 years,
5 years.
$6 million for Perfetti. Yep.
So so that's a pretty sizable gap between Perfetti and Benson Doan, who both got 7 years.
Yeah.
He could, like, there's a push and pull there, and I think also what the discussion we just had with Nikishin with the trade potential trade market. Montreal is another team that seems to be in if someone, especially a center, becomes available. They seemingly are a team that is would be very interested, and Bolduc would make a lot of sense to be an NHL ready younger player to
Yeah.
send back to the team that they're making the deal with, or even they were connected a little bit to Kirill Marchenko from Columbus. If
Yeah.
Columbus is like Bolduc would be someone Columbus would definitely want to kind of include in that deal as a starting point for some NHL help there. So again, is are they kind of also waiting to not handcuff themselves or handcuff an acquiring team in the trade market? Who knows?
So that's primarily what's left for RFAs. There are some smaller contracts that need to get done. So we go to UFAs.
I
Cool.
yeah,
Just kind
I
of
think a
highlight.
couple names that
Uh,
are a little surprising, I guess.
yeah. So our top UFA not signed right now is Michael Bunting. That's an interesting one. He's primarily good both ends of the ice, middle six winger. Um, would think he'd have a spot by now. Um, there's some defensemen out there. Klingberg, I'm not completely shocked because it kind of seems like he's going short deals kind of every year. But at the same time, veteran defensemen can provide some offense. A little surprising. He's still out there. Uh, Nick Blankenberg was one great numbers, but an undersized defenseman. So the way that NHL is trending, kind of understand why he may still be out there.
And the fact that he was traded for a sixth round pick at the trade deadline
Yep.
probably gave a little bit of a clue as to how he was being valued across the league.
Tolvanen, Seattle, let's say third line,
Yeah.
Kurashev, Evander Kane, I think was either he did sign overseas or he's rumored KHL maybe. Um, and you start to get into some very similar names, similar roles. So Kane, Tarasenko, David Perron, um,
Henrique,
Henrique's out there. Yep. One
JVR, Sod.
kind of your veteran short 1 year deal and plug in fourth line, maybe last spot for third line type guys.
Yeah.
Um, One name I think we both thought was going to be gone by now, would have found a spot early on in free agency is Connor Ingram, goalie. And he was kind of part of the turmoil a little bit in Edmonton about we don't have a clear starting goalie, but he's still good as kind of a tandem guy. And yeah, just hasn't found a spot yet. There were some, I think we at one point tossed out like Ottawa maybe being a fit. There's been some other teams supposedly rumored for Ingram, but just ultimately has not found a spot yet.
Yeah, as we were prepping for this, I asked you, did we miss his signing or something? Because I thought he had signed, and we double checked that, and no, he is indeed still out there. Yeah, Ottawa was a team that was pretty publicly connected to him for a while, I think, but kind of just thinking around the teams and where they are, there aren't a ton of teams that need an extra goalie right now.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see where he ends up. Maybe there's some dominoes that need to fall. We'll maybe talk about that in a minute, but yeah, he's kind of interesting. The only other one that I think is a little bit worth mentioning, Logan Stanley, big defenseman, but it
Yeah.
came out that he got hurt in the playoffs with Buffalo in the series against Boston. And I and kind of wonder if there's something that he needs to hit a certain point in his recovery before it makes sense for him to sign a deal with a new with any team, I guess I should say, because I think he's going to want to make sure that he's healthy, and the team signing him is going to want to make sure. Could be a situation where he ends up just doing a 1 year deal to kind of get back and show that he is indeed healthy, depending on the severity of that injury.
So there's at this point in the offseason, some of these guys will get signed to actual deals. Um, but a lot of them we could end up seeing either minimum contracts for or even tryouts, where they would hope to eventually sign a deal at some point in the preseason. Um, but yeah, definitely some interesting depth names, some familiar names, as you kind of alluded to, mentioning like a Van Riemsdyk. Not shocked he's still out there. Could be very useful for someone in their bottom six, but might just kind of wait and see how some things shake out. Um, do we want to talk trade market or extensions?
I think real quickly, last point is like we do our projections. Those I'm not going to say become invalidated after a certain date, but we expect kind of once July 15th, I'll just say conservatively,
Yeah.
hits, once that kind of date, 2 weeks after the start of unrestricted free agency and players are still unsigned, we're expecting that their actual contract is going to come in well below what we're projecting.
For
Because,
UFAs to be specific.
yes, for unrestricted
Yep.
free agents. So the Buntings, the Klingbergs, the Blankenbergs, the Tolvanens out there in particular, we had decent projected value for them I would be shocked if any of them got more than 2 to 3 million at this point on much more than a 1 year contract would be shocking. But
Yep.
I think we do trademark it quickly and then maybe just and then use that to kind of transition to a couple of the extension eligible unrestricted free agents that teams probably aren't trading right before training camp starts, but there could be some smoke around them if they get off to poor starts. Trade market, I think there's two names that we're still kind of, and you let me know if you have others, but there's two names that there's still smoke around that doesn't seem to be going away. Dylan Larkin and Connor Hellebuyck. Hellebuyck's kind of who I was referencing with Ingram is that a domino that needs to fall before a team, maybe even the Jets, are in on someone like a Connor Ingram. I guess thoughts on those, any other
Yeah.
names?
So kind of with Hellebuck, so they signed Stuart Skinner.
Yes.
Now, if Hellebuck's gone, there's room for another goalie, unless they want to go with one of their AHL guys. I'm blanking on who they had up for a little while.
I'll look at it while you
Okay, but so that very well could be a domino to fall. Ingram and Skinner could be a tandem in Winnipeg after being there in Edmonton together. Um, I don't, I don't know exactly what's going to happen with Hellebuck because Winnipeg very much seems like their intention is to be a good team still. Um, Hellebuck wanting out specifically as a goalie is not the easiest thing to make happen. I mean, nothing is, but as you kind of mentioned, there's not a lot of open spots for goaltenders. Now, if Connor Hellebuyck becomes available, sure, a lot of teams should be lining up, but you're also acquiring an older goaltender who has a decent amount left on his contract, who ultimately had a down season for his standards.
also a knee injury.
And right. So there's a level of maybe things are a little bit more complicated than you would think. Um, It seemed like at one point in the off season things were close with a Hellebuck trade, and now things have really cooled off.
Whether that's because he's not being traded or whether teams aren't operating right now, D-
Right.
don't know.
Yeah. So I don't know. I lean towards he'll be traded still. Um, it's just yeah, we kind of are at a point right now, and we pretty much let off the episode with this. Everything's quiet. So there's no real indication of what's going to happen there. The The Sabres were a team that was very much rumored around the draft time of Hellebuck could happen. Um, Ultimately, it didn't. We have talked about past episodes. There's some Sabres players that could have gone the other way that gained trade protection, which could complicate that now. Florida's a team that I would still kind of wonder about. Um,
They got
I don't
Markstrom
think it
though.
happens because of Markstrom, but it kind of seemed like once the Markstrom trade happened, it took Florida out of it. They were just one of the more heavily rumored teams for Hellebuck. Um, yeah, I don't know. I lean towards he's moved still, but at the same time, I think it's possible maybe Winnipeg overplayed their hand in some trade talks a little bit, and now the amount of fits are not to the extent it was, let's say, draft time.
Yeah, Carolina's the other team that little bit of
Maybe
smoke
still.
around. Yep. They they have Kochekov and Busey under contract without necessarily an obvious third in the pipeline. And for a team that's rolled three goalies, they're surprisingly thin there right now.
Yeah.
And so, like a Kochekov going back to Winnipeg could make some sense. But to me it's Buffalo, Carolina, maybe New Jersey having a need. That's the only other team that I could.
Yeah. I I think I'm with you. I mean, just looking at cap space, like there's other teams like the Kings could be interested. Maybe they are able to send like Kemper back. That helps clear some of the money, but they'd have to clear a little bit more. So it becomes a little more difficult. Um, I'd wonder what Pittsburgh's doing. They have some young goalies that very much could kind of be given an opportunity to battle for a top role or become a tandem there. But if they want to make a little bit more of a push with Crosby Malkin, maybe Hellebuyck does that. Um, yeah, I don't know. There's just it. There's not a ton of obvious fits. There's kind of the ones you could talk yourself into. All right, it could make sense, but maybe it's more of it makes sense for a video game and not really how teams actually operate.
Yeah, San Jose we had talked about in the past as
Yeah,
being a potential fit. Does Hellbuck see them as close enough to being a contender? Maybe that is good enough. That and then the other team, just like you can never count Florida out, you can never count Vegas out of these type of situations.
yeah,
It looks like they don't have cap space, but somehow they seem to always manage to find cap space to make something work. But to me, if a trade's going to happen, I'm still looking at Buffalo or Carolina
yeah,
as the two teams. I think there could be an opportunity, and people have alluded to this a little bit, is instead of Buffalo sending Luukkonen to Winnipeg, he ends up potentially in New Jersey, and maybe there's some sort of three-team trade there. Maybe he's a little bit more amenable to New Jersey versus Winnipeg, and then
yeah,
maybe Winnipeg can get a few more assets or something it, by making a little bit of a three-team trade or something. I don't know. I'm speculating, but the I think Buffalo would have options for moving Luukkonen elsewhere if it came down to it, and maybe it might need to come down to it.
yep,
But I will say the fact that Winnipeg put out their in the middle of the summer their schedule release, and Connor Hellebuyck's picture did not appear a single time. I'm not usually one to read into those things. Like I find sometimes that silly because graphics in hockey aren't necessarily talking about all that stuff. Hockey ops, I should say, but like he's he's your best recognizable player,
yeah,
and he's not in a single thing.
yeah. No, that is notable. It's different if it's a random third line guy or something, but yeah, that is notable for sure. Um, Dylan Larkin, talk about a center that is a little different. Teams are always looking for centers. It's also a situation of the player can kind of decide where he wants to go. Um, Initially, a lot of the teams that were put out there, it seemed like were kind of the standard. All right, that is what players are asking for nowadays. So you see Florida, Vegas. Um, I don't remember if it was initially or it expanded a little bit, but I think Dallas was mentioned at one
Yeah,
point. Um, it's another one where kind of all these top teams players want to go to. There's not a ton of space for them. So it might kind of turn into the teams kind of, or the team and the players reps kind of staring each other down, waiting for someone to blink. Um, I don't, I mean, Montreal's kind of there as like an obvious team that could use another top center. Is he willing to go play in Canada? I'm not sure. Um, that feels like an obvious fit as far as a team that has assets to provide, but I'm just not sure he's waving to go there. Um,
And what appetite does Detroit have to send him to a division rival that you potentially
yeah.
are competing with? Although if you're trading Larkin away, you're probably not contending this season.
Once the big Carlson deal happened in Anaheim and all the Gauthier rumors were out there of him being or wanting a very high AAV as well. I saw there were people speculating, well, could Anaheim move Gauthier to Detroit for Larkin? Could that be a spot? And okay, in theory, like it could make some sense, but then Detroit has to be meeting Gauthier's demands, which seems very unlikely. And then does Larkin want to wave to Anaheim? I don't think it would be his first or fifth choice, really. So it just kind of becomes you go down the list of where could he fit, and it's a little less obvious of kind of how are they going to make a trade work.
Yeah. Just some teams that so if he said, okay, I'll open it up a little bit more, I'm going to work on the fact that he would want to go to a playoff contending type team, asset wise and cap space wise, as well as just team fit, just running down the list. Boston could make some sense.
Yeah.
Buffalo could make a little bit of sense there. Montreal, as you said. I don't know if Tampa has the assets to make it work, but they could really use another center.
I don't know who they
Toronto,
send out. That's the
that's
issue.
the issue. Yeah. Toronto could really use some help at center, but I don't know who they're sending out. Caroline always makes sense, but they don't necessarily have a need, but he would make them better. Philadelphia, does he perceive them as good enough? Because they have cap space, they have some younger assets that could be interesting.
Didn't Briere say something along the lines of like they expect to take a step back or something,
I don't,
something
yeah,
weird like that? I don't remember what it was. Um, yeah, Pittsburgh. I'm sure Seattle would love to do it, but I don't think he's waving to go to
no,
Seattle.
no. I mean, again, the San Jose is, I don't think he's necessarily waving there. Can Vegas make it work? I don't know if they need him, but again, he makes them better. So they're always in those type of ones. The one team that really could use him, and again, don't know exactly how it lines up, are the Kings. The Kings would could really use someone else to play top six center.
I think the issue with that is once, well, I don't know.
But I don't know how it works.
Well, yeah, they're just needing to send out some money for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
I don't know how they really match up with that.
yeah. Maybe they can get there. Like Trevor Moore's 4.2, and they're sitting at about four available now. So that's getting close. But outside of Quentin Byfield, they don't have anyone on that roster that I look at that I would want playing in my top six as a center.
I'm sure Detroit would take like Dumoulin or Edmondson or something.
They do love their veteran defensemen. They sure do.
Get as many shutdown defensive defensemen who aren't as good anymore
Yeah.
as they can. Yep.
Any other of the kind of like it was promised to be a wild summer, and since the draft, there has not been, I don't think, a single player of any like name recognition traded. which is the case
Yeah.
every single year. Robert Thomas is not going anywhere. I don't think he ever was. And then everything happened real quickly in the couple of days around the draft, and then that's basically been it.
Robertson signing his 1 year deal.
Yeah, I don't even know if he can be traded yet
Not
because of,
right now.
but I think
Yeah.
as
So,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Okay. That'd be more of an in season thing then.
yeah, I think he has to wait
I,
till the January 1st, if at all, during the season.
yeah, I really don't know. And I'm not, I'm trying to think of like, is there someone out there that no one's talked about to move?
I guess the other one, and this is a good transition here into just
Okay.
a few of the extension players to keep an eye on. Kirill Marchenko, I referenced him earlier this
Oh,
episode
yeah.
when talking
Yep.
about Montreal and Bolduc. He's the other one that there's been quite a bit of smoke around because it seems like, well, I guess him and Werenski, but it seems like Werenski's kind of said, no, don't trade me yet. I don't want
Yeah.
that to happen. But Marchenko seemingly has communicated to Columbus that if he's signing anything further, it's just to get him to unrestricted free agency with them. He's not going to sign a long-term contract to stay in Columbus, even though he is eligible for one this summer. So he's the other one that maybe is out there as a potential trade candidate. But he
Hmm.
also that also cooled down a little bit as well. I think even his agent might have came out and been like, we're a little bit ahead of ourselves right now.
Okay. One team that wants to be good. Let me take a quick look before I say anything here. Wants to be good, but hasn't really been able to make much noise. Um, Seattle, they have a ton of space. One of the, I'm looking at our extension list, and actually the highest UFA defenseman is Vince Dunn.
Taking out Quinn Hughes and Cal McCarr.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of assumed like, okay, those deals are getting done. So we'll see. But I wonder about Vince Dunn, and maybe this is more of a mid-year thing. Maybe he turns into someone that gets dealt towards the deadline. Um, and I guess it's kind of a larger Seattle conversation too, of like where's the breaking point of they just try and all right, let's cash in a little bit here and lean a little more towards the rebuild, retool side. I kind of mentioned Vince Dunn just because that's a situation that needs some sort of domino to fall. Jared McCann's been kind of out there already as a name. Maybe that's one to sort of mention right now as a possible trade. Um, I don't know. I don't know what Seattle's doing. So I guess it seems like they're trying to win. So maybe those aren't names that are on the move, but
They're not their roster is not good enough to win. So let's kind of do a quick reaction, kind of conclude the episode in this way. I'll go down kind of the pending unrestricted free agents. You give me, is there urgency to get them signed? And do you think that they are with their current team at the end of this? I guess Let's phrase it this way. Will they sign an extension in the next month or two before the season starts? If not, is there urgency to get one done? And will they finish the season with their current team?
Okay.
Quinn Hughes, extension or no extension by the start of the season?
I'm going to say yes, extension.
Cal McCarr, extension, no extension.
Yes.
Of those two, who would you be more comfortable betting on does, in fact, have an extension in place by the time of the first regular season game?
I'm going to go Quinn Hughes.
Okay, I would go Cal McCarr in that with that situation.
I'm leaning towards, I'm expecting kind of worse or better. I guess depends how you want to look at it. Odds for Quinn Hughes. He's less likely,
That Yeah, that's fair.
but still likely. And I'm comfortable with it. Where I think Cal McCarr, they could just say, you know what, let's just wait. It's gonna get done.
That I think of the two, there's a little more urgency around Hughes from the Wild's perspective
Yes.
than McCarr.
That's where I'm kind of thinking they try and get that done now.
Yeah. DeBrincat, extension or no extension?
No.
Urgent or non-urgent?
Urgent, but not in reality. At least
Biggest
the
question.
headspace of Detroit, I think, is what I'm getting at there.
Biggest question. Does he finish the season with Detroit if unsigned?
Ooh. Um, I'm gonna kind of cop out of this a little bit. If Larkin's still there, yes. If he's not, no.
Kucherov, extension before the season?
I'm gonna I lean no, but maybe. I that feels like it's not urgent. That
Yeah,
very much feels like a situation that it'll get done. He's Tampa Bay. They're
yeah,
keeping him. So
yeah. Drake Batherson, extension before the season.
I'm gonna say no. In urgency, yes, it's urgent.
If unsigned, does he finish with Ottawa?
No,
I think I agree with that.
I think they
Mark,
move him if they can't sign him.
Mark Stone,
Not before the season, not urgent.
Vince Dunn, we already kind of talked about.
That's such a wild card because I don't know what Seattle's doing. I don't think one gets done before the season. And I don't know if it's urgent or not. I think maybe Seattle thinks it might be, but maybe not either. I don't know. I don't know.
Finish the season in Seattle.
No, I'm gonna say no right now.
Crosby,
No, not a
yeah,
not urgent. Probably gets done eventually if he keeps playing.
yeah.
I think he's gonna keep playing, but
Most likely finishes the season in Pittsburgh as well.
yes, yeah.
Lehkonen, Arturi Lehkonen, Colorado.
Not before the season, but I do think he finishes the year with
Yeah.
Colorado.
We'll do a couple more and then we'll call it
Okay.
Jared McCann with Seattle.
Um, doesn't happen before the season, and I'm gonna lean towards it's not urgent. I think he ultimately gets traded at some
Yeah.
point.
Pavel Zacha, Boston.
I'm going to say there is. Hmm, I'm going to say it's not urgent. I don't think one gets done before the season. I'm going to say he is on the team through the end of the year. The one thing I kind of like, you mentioned Boston as a potential fit for Larkin if he's
Yeah.
willing to go there. And it would make a lot of sense to me if he was a piece that got sent back to Detroit.
I'll stick with Boston real quick. Casey Middlestat.
Um, doesn't happen before the season. I think he's on the team through the year, assuming they're in contention.
Let's see. Drew Doughty. I think we know that it's Kings or nothing.
Yep.
Justin Falk. I personally highly doubt that he's extending in Detroit.
Yeah, I don't think he does, and it's very possible he's traded before the end of the
Yeah.
year.
Eric Carlson.
No extension, but not traded.
Dmitry Orlov.
Could be traded, no extension.
And then do a couple Minnesota, and that'll be about it. Newly acquired Blake Coleman for Minnesota.
I'm gonna say no extension. Finishes the year with
Yeah.
Minnesota.
Ryan Hartman with Minnesota.
I will say the same thing, but that could also very much depend on someone like a Dylan Larkin.
Yep.
If they can somehow make the cap work, Hartman would, just being a pending UFA, kind of a clear piece to send back to Detroit.
And our all-time favorite right shot defenseman, who's always in the trade rumors, it feels like, we'll finish with Rasmus Ristolainen.
I think he finally gets traded, so I'm going to say no extension. And by the deadline, he's traded.
I think unless there's someone else that stands out to you.
Uh,
Ooh,
no.
I got two more.
Okay.
Jordan Binnington.
Not extended. Um, hmm. Traded, so doesn't finish the year with
Okay.
the team.
And then Ryan O'Reilly,
Ryan O'Reilly, Mr. Trade
Nashville.
Clause, Phantom Trade Clause.
Yes.
Um, does not sign an extension and gets traded, I'm gonna say. I think Nashville is doing the best they can to try and compete still. I just I feel like the new regime there's smart enough to say, all right, we're not winning. He's gonna get us a significant return. That's a trade that happens.
They've also this summer put in some redundancy where they don't have a first line center necessarily, but they at least have some guys who can play center after acquiring Ross Colton, uh, Maverick Bork, they
Yep.
acquired this summer as well.
Drury's there,
Jack
which he's
Drury
down the lineup, but talking depth, yeah.
and Alex Kerfoot. Maybe not a full on center at this point in his career, but has some experience playing there. So, do you want any of those guys as your first line center? Not necessarily, but you at least have respectable players available to slide in if you do end up trading Ryan O'Reilly, where
Yep.
last year that was not the case. So I think unless there's anyone else want to highlight, I think we'll wrap the episode up there.
Yep.
And we appreciate you listening. Max Turn Podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Content AFPanalytics.com, X, Blue Sky, Threads. Got a little bit in the works, but we've been kind of taking it a little bit easy this summer. We'll see what episodes we get up in the next 6 weeks before the season starts. I think we'll try and do a season preview, but got some things going on, so we'll see what happens. But we do appreciate you listening, subscribing, following, so you know when we do have the next episode up. And with that, we'll talk to you next time.